Good evening. We are going to continue our series on love and relationships. And so I'm so excited to have this conversation because love isn't just about finding someone, it's about being whole within yourself before stepping into a serious relationship. So last week we explored the dynamics of the parent and child relationship. We discussed a little bit about feelings around like how you may feel as an adult child once your parent starts to age and the roles reverse a little bit. We also talked about having children and caring for them and their mental health issues, and also teaching them things that will help them to be resilient and just being consistent in their upbringing and how those things really make a difference. This week we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about romantic relationships and mental health, and just start to think about, like, what does a healthy relationship mean to you? What does it mean to you to have a healthy relationship? Romantic relationships can bring a lot of joy, growth, and companionship, but they also can be very challenging, especially if we're not in a healthy emotional place when we enter into that relationship. So as always, the core of our conversation is going to be mental health. Relationships thrive when both individuals are emotionally and mentally well. And so we're going to just unpack that together. So a fulfilling relationship starts with being a fulfilled you, being a whole person. You know, a lot of times people say, oh, I found my better half. But the true key to a healthy, vibrant relationship is two individuals, two whole people coming together. And so when we find the right person, we want to be whole and we want that person to be whole. And the wholeness doesn't come from finding someone else to complete us. The wholeness comes from already being complete within. And that doesn't mean that throughout life you won't continue to learn and grow and evolve, but just coming into a relationship, you definitely want to be your whole self. And we'll talk a little bit in detail about what that means. Before entering a relationship, it is important to cultivate a sense of self-sufficiency and emotional independence. So relying on someone else to fill emotional voids can lead to unhealthy dependencies. And instead, we want to be able to focus on our personal growth and our personal well-being. And so here are some ways that we can build wholeness within ourselves. The first thing that we want to focus on is self-awareness, understanding who you are, understanding what your needs are, understanding what you bring to the table, and take time to explore your passions, your values, and your long-term goals. And it's important to have a level of self-awareness because even in a relationship, you still want to be able to maintain some autonomy. You don't want to be in a relationship where one person is dictating every single thing that happens within their relationship, and they're dictating every single thing in your life. The best relationships are the ones where two people can learn from each other and grow together. You also want to focus on healing past wounds. Any unresolved trauma or heartbreak can affect new relationships. You want to be able to engage in some form of self-reflection. You can do that through journaling, or you can do that through seeking professional counseling or therapy to work through any past pain and ensure you're emotionally ready for a new commitment. Another way to build wholeness within yourself is through emotional stability. And now a partner can support you, but they should not be your sole source of happiness. So you have to learn how to regulate your emotions. You have to be able to identify your emotions first in order to be able to regulate them. But learning to regulate your emotions, practicing self-care, learning how to care for yourself, learning what things that you can do for yourself outside of stressful moments, outside of work. What things can you do to relieve stress? What things can you do to relax? What things just bring you joy and help you to feel relaxed? And for some people, that could be a massage, a facial, reading a book, quiet time alone. it's up to the individual to figure out what that practice of self-care really looks like for them individually. And you also want to be able to develop a support network outside of your romantic relationships. You want to be able to have some friends and some other things to do independent of that relationship. And that relationship should never be your source of everything. Also, for wholeness, you want to be able to have purpose and direction. A strong sense of self prevents you from losing yourself in a relationship. If you focus on your personal aspirations, if you have career goals or hobbies that bring fulfillment to you outside of romantic involvement, that is also a way to help you to be a whole person. Building self-love, develop a healthy relationship with yourself by practicing self-compassion, which is something that we talked about earlier, and affirming your worth. When you genuinely appreciate who you are, then you have the ability to attract healthier relationships. Another thing we want to do is we want to be intentional about who we date. So not every connection is meant to be a commitment. Not every time that you meet somebody and you feel like something could be there, it doesn't mean that you want to go from zero to a romantic relationship. You want to take some time to get to know that person. You want to be intentional, which means like making choices based on if you're compatible with that person, if you share values, and if you and that person are both emotionally healthy. Attraction alone or getting into a relationship out of loneliness can sometimes just lead to like an unhealthy relationship, and it can also lead to getting in a relationship that may not last. Not every connection is meant to be a long-term commitment, and that's okay. Dating with intention means making careful choices based on compatibility, values, and emotional health. So the physical attraction or the fear of being alone at times can cause people to enter into relationships prematurely. And it's about seeking relationships that align with who you are and where you want to go in life. And so some key ways to approach dating with greater purpose and awareness. One thing that you can do, the first thing that you can do is to know your non-negotiables. Before entering into the dating world, take the time to reflect on what truly matters to you in a relationship. Your non-negotiables are your values or qualities or just things that you are looking for in a relationship, where your life is headed, life goals, the things that you feel like that relationship can add to your life and how you feel like you can add to someone else's life, and those things that you really just aren't willing to compromise on. And you're not willing to compromise on those things because if you compromise on those things, they will cause you stress or discomfort, or could lead you into a space where you could potentially start having anxiety and just other mental health issues. So you want to make your non-negotiables truly non-negotiables, like things that you are not willing to compromise on. And so when we think about knowing our non-negotiables, we want these to be our core values. Do you share the same beliefs as this person about family, about having children? Does this person want to get married? About your religion? Do you have commonalities in your religious belief? Lifestyle choices? Are you aligned on long-term goals, such as career ambitions, travel? Your communication style? Do you feel heard and seen and understood in your relationship? Or do you feel like this person dismisses your feelings? Also, with your intentionality, you want to make sure that you think about emotional availability. Is this person ready for the type of relationship? Sometimes we can become involved with people who have clearly stated in the beginning that they don't want a relationship. And sometimes people can feel like, well, I'm going to change that person's mind. And then later on down the road, that person's like, you know what this was? And the other person is like, oh my goodness. And just have ended up getting their feelings hurt and feel like betrayed by that person, when really that person upfront let you know what they wanted that relationship to be. And also not being afraid to let other people know that you are emotionally available, so you can set yourself up for, if that person does want to have a relationship as well, you can move in that direction instead of hiding it to protect your feelings. And so just being clear about your non-negotiables really helps you avoid investing time in relationships that will ultimately lead to frustration or will not be aligned with what you want. And so another thing that you want to be able to do with relationships is you want to be able to recognize red flags, and you also want to be able to recognize those positive indicators, which we call green flags. So a red flag would be any warning sign that, I need to stop, I don't need to go any further with this person. And a green flag would just be a positive indicator, like, oh, I need to keep going. And so signs of unhealthy relationships and red flags will be a lack of respect for your boundaries, frequent dishonesty, or someone who is very secretive, a person who is emotionally unavailable or inconsistent, a person who has controlling behaviors or who can be manipulative, who gaslights a person and makes them think that what they're saying is not true about them, or always tries to play the victim. Any patterns, if this person has patterns of unhealthy relationships, all of those things would be red flags, things that make you just stop having relationships with that person, because in the end, you know that it's not going to end up the way that you will want it to. And so green flags will be signs of healthy relationships, and some of those green flags will be open and honest communication, having a way to respectfully resolve conflict. If there's conflict at times and then there's a lot of yelling or tensions get really high and people don't know how to express their emotions and things like that, you don't want to be in that type of relationship. That would be a red flag. So for the green flags, we want to just make sure that our communication is open and honest. We want to make sure we have mutual respect and support, shared values, future goals, where you see yourself in life, where that person sees themselves in life, see yourselves going in the same direction, emotional security and trust, a willingness to work through conflicts in a mature way. All of those things will be green flags. And so you want to make sure that when you are entering into relationships with people, and when you're thinking about getting involved in a romantic relationship because you feel like it's time in your life or you feel like you've met the right person, you want to just check and make sure that you aren't seeking love to fill a void or to complement an already. You want to be able to seek love and relationships to complement an already fulfilled life. You don't want to go into a relationship out of loneliness and trying to get a person to fill all these voids in your life, because you want that relationship to be an enhancement to an already full and whole life. And so it's natural to crave connection, but dating from a place of loneliness can just lead to very unhealthy attachments. So before seeking a relationship, you can ask yourself, am I happy and fulfilled on my own? So that relationship definitely should add to your happiness, not be the sole source of it. You don't want to put so much pressure on someone else to make you happy, because it can be draining and it can also cause damage to the relationship in ways that the relationship could end prematurely, and that you may have potentially been a good fit for each other. But if you're putting so much strain on that person to fulfill you in areas that they should not have to fulfill you in, then that can cause a lot of strain on the relationship. Another question you can ask yourself to just make sure that you're not entering into a relationship out of loneliness is, am I choosing someone because they're right for me, or just because I don't want to be alone? And another question that you can ask yourself is, would I still want this relationship if I were feeling emotionally fulfilled in other areas of my life? And that's something that my pastor was talking about a few weeks ago at the singles conference. He was saying that a lot of times in marriage, people take vows for better or for worse, and people focus on the worst, like, oh, if this person gets sick, or if we go through a financial crisis, or something really traumatic happens, would I still be here for that person? But people don't focus on the fact that if I am my best self, living my best, absolute best life, would I want to be with this person? And so that's kind of like an example of when a person could potentially enter into a relationship because of loneliness. And healthy relationships are about complementing each other, not compensating for personal emptiness. Focus on building a fulfilling life through friendships, hobbies, career, and self-care so that when love comes, it is a choice and it's not a necessity. You also want to be able to look for emotional maturity. Can you both communicate and handle conflict and grow together? Because attraction fades. Sometimes it comes in ebbs and flows. Sometimes you're like super attracted to your spouse, and then sometimes you may just be like, just not having the time or just busy doing a lot of other things that your hot meter may not be on 100. And so attraction can sometimes, the level that you are attracted, you're always going to be attracted to that person, but it just may not always be on a 100. So emotional intelligence and how you solve problems together, how you raise your children together, all of those things are things that can bring you closer together. And so maturity can create long-lasting bonds. And so you could just put your relationship to the test by saying, can we communicate effectively? Do we communicate effectively with one another? Do we both have the ability to freely express ourselves respectfully and talk about our thoughts and feelings openly? How do we handle conflict? Do small disagreements turn into emotional explosions, or are they approached with respect? And are we both willing to grow together? Relationships require personal growth and mutual growth. And if one or both people resist change or self-improvement, the relationship could struggle and it could cause a strain on the relationship. So a mature partner will take accountability for their actions. They will support your growth, and they will foster a relationship where both of you feel seen, heard, and valued. Dating with intention means slowing down and making thoughtful choices, prioritizing deep connections over fleeting attractions, being clear about what your needs are, and recognizing healthy and unhealthy patterns. Also, fostering emotional maturity. You can build relationships that are truly fulfilling. And sometimes you can fall into patterns that don't serve you, whether it's staying in a toxic relationship or accepting less than you deserve or repeating past mistakes. But awareness is going to be the first step. And so common unhealthy patterns will be relying on your partner for self-worth or happiness, constantly excusing poor behavior or lack of respect, ignoring personal boundaries or feeling drained, and staying out of fear of being alone. You want to be able to prioritize your mental health, because being in a relationship, in a romantic relationship with someone, whether you are seriously dating them or whether you're married to that person, it can have an impact on your mental health in positive and negative ways. And so you just want to make sure that the relationship that you are in is a healthy relationship, and that it does support your mental well-being and not harm it. And so every relationship is not going to be perfect. There are going to be things that happen. But I think essentially, as long as two people are growing and learning together, respecting one another, they want to be there for one another, and they are going to continue to grow and love each other through whatever season they're in life, and be honest with each other, then I think that it has the potential to really work and to be beautiful. And so some ways that you can ensure that your relationship nurtures mental health is to maintain your individuality. Your partner is a part of your life, not your whole life. Set respect boundaries. Emotional and personal space is necessary. You want to foster open communication. You want to share feelings, concerns, and needs without fear. And you also want to be able to support each other's growth and encourage personal development and healing. And so another thing that I think is really important, because I am just in this space talking about mental health, but also at the same time, last week when we talked about parent and child relationships, I think just helping and being really intentional about your children once they start to grow up and start to date or start to show interest in people. I think that it's really good and helpful to help them to understand who they are, to have a sense of self-awareness, so they will know and understand what type of person they would like to have in their life and what type of person they can bring their best self to the table and someone else can bring their best self to the table. And knowing just like the things that they want out of life, the type of person that they should be looking for. And it's not just this love at first sight or pie in the sky type of thing, but it's just like really intentional. Like, I am a person and I have goals, I have a certain personality, and I want to have someone that is going to complement that. And I want to be a person that's going to complement someone else. And so love is a journey. It's not a destination. The healthiest relationships come from two whole individuals who choose each other, not out of desperation, but out of mutual love, respect, and emotional well-being. So think of one thing that you can do today, this week, that you can work on to nurture your emotional health, whether you want to journal, whether you want to look into finding a therapist, setting boundaries, or simply just spending time with yourself. I challenge you this week to nurture your emotional health, and I hope you have a wonderful and blessed week.